Morning, everyone. Welcome to Getting Back to Zero. This is obviously a special day, being 9/11. Want to say thank you to anyone that was involved with that. Obviously, a very tough day. I kind of debated about doing a show this morning because this is a day with a lot of reflection, but this is a hard day. But I thought, you know what, sobriety is hard. And these are examples of things that we have to face. And so many times in my life, I faced any kind of tough times with alcohol, and I did not learn how to cope with things properly. And this is an example of one of those days when I need to. So we're going to go on with this, but I do want to thank anyone that's, well, I know we've all been touched by that day, but if anyone's got any personal involvement or whatever, we're glad you're here. So anyways, with that being said, welcome. My name is Jeff, and I am calling or talking to you from under the porch in an old coal room, which is where my wife made me shove all my personal belongings that obviously, as you can tell behind me, should be all over the walls of a family room, which she doesn't understand, but we're still working on that one. But I'm thrilled. I've been trying to get Kate to join us for a while. We finally worked out where she had a free couple of minutes. So I'm thrilled to bring in Kate V. Kate, where are you? I don't even know where you live. You're on the West Coast, aren't you?
Yeah. So I'm Kate. I'm in Olympia, Washington. Yeah. And I'm in my cloffice, which is where my husband asked me to shove all of my fashion items, my hats, my jewelry, my perfume, my clothing. And so I call it a cloffice because it's a closet and an office. And it's my little space. This is where I go to meetings. This is where I do everything.
It's obviously quite dull compared to what, my junk fist. I don't know what you would call it, but all the things this should be in the entryway to any house. I believe.
Oh, goodness.
See, I don't like that look. I see that look all the time. In fact, I'm going to switch you over there because that's welcome. I'm glad you're here. Tell me, what are you doing for starters on a day like 9/11? This is a tough one, but I just felt we gotta live and we gotta face this stuff. So what do you got planned today?
Yeah, so I'm going to scoot. There we go. Get more in the picture here. So this is definitely a tough day. I am married to a retired soldier. He was Special Forces in the Army. He retired after 20 years. So days like this, when the conflicts in the Middle East is brought up and, trauma that people struggled with, both foreign and domestic, service people involved, frontline workers, we talk about it. And I encourage him to reach out to his Army buddies and really talk about the time they spent in the Middle East and all the things that led up to 9/11 and the aftermath and how it affected the soldiers. And just like we do in the sober community, those service members stay connected because they're the only ones that can understand that life and that trauma and that those situations. And so days like 9/11 and even Independence Day and, Memorial Day and Veterans Day, those are days that I really encourage my husband to reach out. And he's pretty amazing in that he has kind of taken his personal struggle and now helps, share that with other veterans as well as other families. And so he's still involved with the National Guard and with the Army. And so, we've really made it a point to not shove stuff like this under the rug.
It's really interesting what you said, because talking to other people from the military, because they understand, and I always use the term they get it, and it was sobriety, and it's talking to someone like yourself about what I've gone through or what I go through. My wife doesn't get it. She doesn't. I love her to death. She doesn't have a drinking problem. She doesn't get this. My best friend, two of my best friends, don't have drinking problems. I can't talk to them. I mean, I do, but they don't get it. And where I really deal with when I'm struggling or someone else, it's talking with someone else who gets it is where the healing occurs. And that's interesting you say that about the military, because I'm sure it's the same way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, one of the things we bonded over when we first met was I'm a 20-year nurse, and he was sort of a tenured soldier. And we bonded over the fact that we've lived through things that most people shouldn't see, and they don't want to hear about it, and they don't want to know about it. And we go home and we go on with our lives, and we sort of internalize all those things. And so, and also from that, we both have a pretty gnarly sense of humor, right? As ways to cope.
Right.
He didn't ever go down a rabbit hole with substance use. And so that part of it was hard for him to understand as well.
You're jumping so far ahead of the gun. You're already at minute 53 of what I wanted to cover, but I am going to jump into this because you're talking about dealing with issues. And I'm big into exploring trauma. I'm really learning more about it and understanding that I had things that were not front page news trauma issues in my life that I didn't even consider trauma. But now as I redefine and understand what trauma is, things in my life that really I learned to cope with them, or I coped with them with incorrect methods, which was alcohol, which all it did is bury them down until the alcohol went away, and then the problem's right back. Now we add on all what I did yesterday because I drank all day over those issues. Now we compound it. Do you deal with that? Is that encouraged with him? Is that something he's learned as far as that dealing with that trauma and getting that out and communicating it out?
Yeah, well, we got to a place where we realized that we both needed to seek out help in different areas. And he ended up seeing a counselor who was also a veteran and who understood complex PTSD, especially related to being in the service. And I sought out a nurse practitioner who understood what it's like to endure stress and trauma from the nursing world, and who was also an addiction specialist. So we had to kind of go our different ways. But where we had the common understanding was that life is really freaking hard.
Mm-hmm. My wife is a home health nurse. So, some of the things, but what I always... And now we're jumping to minute hour and 47 of doing service. But I was always jealous of her in her role because she touched lives. And she actually, what I sell is a tangible, boring hardware items for cranes that no one calls me at night and says, we were sitting around the family. We just want to thank you for that crane rope you sold Dad today. That meant the world to us. I don't get that kind of thing. So she gets this with helping people through hospice issues, through dealing with tragedy. And I'm always been so jealous of her. And I'm getting a little bit of that reward now working with other people that are struggling with substance abuse. Mm-hmm. And I love it. It's given me purpose, something to look forward to, so much reward. Yeah. And yeah, well, let's get back to minute one. And what happened to you? What the hell happened to you to get you on a sobriety support meeting on a Saturday morning?
I love it. What the hell happened to you?
Yeah, exactly. What's wrong with you? What's your problem that you're,
Gee, Jeff, how much time do you have?
Yeah, exactly. Let me grab my book here.
Yeah, get a snack and settle in.
Settle in.
Yeah. So my sobriety date is 2/10/18. So I'm a little over 3.5 years. I always emphasize the half because that counts. That's a big deal. Every day counts. And I didn't drink in high school. I didn't drink in college. I became a registered nurse at like 22. I had got married. I bought my first house. I was, like Overachievers Anonymous should have been my first group, struggling perfectionist. So trying to really grow up fast and do all the things and be all the things and have the husband in the house and the perfect cars and the career. And I started out in a high stress ICU step down unit where I was, I worked for 7 years, and midway through that, I got in a car accident and I had to take like a month off of work. And I remember sitting around my house as like a 25-year-old thinking, and the chiropractors were telling me like I had such bad back pain that I'd probably never work as a nurse again. And I just sat around thinking my world was coming to an end. And I quit eating. Of course I couldn't exercise, which was my therapy at the time. And I really sunk into deep depression, coupled with like crippling anxiety. And around that time, I discovered through maybe some of my older nurse friends, I don't remember how I even got turned on to it, but that you could have a glass or two of wine and it would relax you. And for me also at the time, I was struggling with my weight and I just wasn't eating. So I realized that I could have a glass of wine and it would prompt sort of an appetite. So around that time, I would drink a glass of wine or two, like almost experimentally, because I just didn't drink. My priority was getting up and going for a run in the morning, or getting up and, going to work at 7 a.m. It was never drinking. And so fast forward, once I picked up alcohol and I realized I was calmer, I was cooler, I was more collected, I was able to eat a meal without feeling guilty, all the things that alcohol does for you, right? All the ways it sort of glosses over the hard edges. I got through that time in my mid-20s, but I also started drinking socially. And, I really, really bought in hard to the alcohol's glamorous. If you want to be an adult, you have a glass of wine and, you just look so grown up and fantastic. And I really bought into like that a glass of wine would like give me a sense of sophistication. And I just bought into that so hard. So social drinking in my 20s, which I didn't realize at the time also was prompted by the stress of what I saw and did on a daily basis at work. I ended up switching to night shift, and where, night shift nurses work really pretty autonomously because you don't want to call a doctor at 2 a.m. if you don't have to. So you really think on your toes, you make a lot of your own decisions, you bounce ideas off of each other. You really work autonomously, basically. And we just handled some gnarly crisis. I mean, I worked on a cardiac step-down, ICU step-down unit. So people were quite literally coding, crashing, dying, all the things. And I'm 25 and running around doing this work. This is my first adult job. I was adulting and learning like mega trauma all in one, and not realizing at the time that I also might have been self-soothing a little bit. So fast forward into my 30s, and I am a party girl. I'm drinking heavily. I am going out on the nights I'm not working, the days I'm not working, and I'm drinking, and my friends and I are drinking heavily. And I just never processed it well. I was always the person who got drunk first, the fastest, the messiest, the sloppiest. I was always blacking out. I mean, there was never anything cool about me drinking, right? Like in my head, it was this cartoon of how cool I looked. But in reality, it was like, oh gosh, hot mess express. And so after working as a nurse for quite a while, I transitioned into pharmaceutical sales, which is there's a heavy drinking culture there. There was a lot of travel. I moved from Olympia to Portland, Oregon, which is a little bigger city. And I was I was single because, you discover alcohol and you realize you don't want to be married and stay home. You want to be out at the bars. And my drinking went from social drinking to just pretty much binge drinking and partying with friends. And I think secretly I took it to another level. I think I drank more when I got home. I almost always drank to black out. I struggled with horrible anxiety and insomnia. So drinking to sleep was a big thing for me. I think I drank myself to sleep pretty much every day or every night in my 30s. And that's embarrassing to admit now. I mean, I'm 42 years old and I think back and there's a decade of my life that I, pickled my liver because I was so anxious and I needed sleep.
I'm actually glad to hear you say that because I never thought about that, but I drank to pass out to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just talking with my wife this morning that I suffer now with restless leg syndrome, which is a mother. That's a fun one. Yeah, it's a great one to have. Thank you, Lord. But anyways, that the drinking to pass out so I could sleep. People said, "Oh, I slept so much better when I quit drinking." No, I actually, for me, because now I don't have the numbing effect for like the restless leg, I probably sleep less deep, at least in my mind. Maybe not physically, but I couldn't fall asleep. I was so riddled with anxiety and stress and everything of the day. I would have lay in bed just tossing and turning in a panic if I didn't drink myself to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm thrilled once again that, hey, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Well, and it's embarrassing, but also really interesting that even as a nurse, I didn't put the two together, that maybe I was self-medicating really bad anxiety. And that the insomnia was also a part of that anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I had tried every sleep aid on the block. I mean, you name it, I tried it. I could take like 3 Ambien and still not fall asleep. I mean, I was a machine, but wine did the trick. And so at first, right? Everything at first. And so in my 30s, I really hit the wine hard. And most of it, I was single. I mean, I was always dating, but I didn't remarry. And so, oh my God, I don't want to go into a big, massive drunkalog, but I wore every black dress in my closet. I was at every party, every event. I was doing the walk of shame so many times. And it started to affect my work. It started to affect my day life. And at the time in my 30s, I was in pharmaceutical sales doing sort of nurse education work. So I wasn't doing bedside care. So I had a more flexible schedule. I could get up and kind of customize my schedule, go see my doctors when I needed to, travel when I needed to. But I just took that and ran with it. And I would get up late and, really put in about 20% of, the productivity level that I was capable of, because I just was so hungover all the time. And I specifically remember this time where I realized alcohol started affecting me physically the next day, to the point where I was experiencing some withdrawal. I had woken up really shaky, like real jittery. And I didn't associate it with like alcohol withdrawal. I just thought I was nervous or something. Again, like a nurse, and we don't know these things, right? And so I had a presentation to give in front of a team of cardiologists. And I was giving a presentation on the clotting cascade, on how blood clots, and we were launching this new anticoagulant, all this stuff. And I have this drug rep with me. So I stand up to give this presentation, and my legs are shaking so hard that it was like my knee was knocking. Mm-hmm. And and I'm not a person that has a lot of stage fright. I was in all the church plays when I was little. I'm a drama queen. I love being on stage. I don't normally struggle with stage fright. And I remember one of the doctors after I was done going, "You poor thing, you must have been so nervous. Your legs were just shaking like crazy." And I remember looking over at the drug rep next to me, and he just looked at me like, he just had my number. He was like, "You are a loser. You are a mess." I was sweating. I was in withdrawal. And the first thing I did was go out to my car, look at myself in the rearview mirror. I had this yellow, puffy face, like these giant bags under my eyes. And I'm, all shaky and sweaty. And I blew the presentation, just blew it. I don't even know what I said. It was probably just a hot mess. And I went straight to a restaurant and had some wine. And that was how the cycle just continued it was like this insidious pattern of do something horrific and be mortified and experience some withdrawal. So you go drink to cope, and then you're right back in that cycle.
But Kate, the problem is how did you feel when you had that glass of wine at the restaurant? Probably fantastic.
Better.
All of it went away.
Yeah,
so it's like, so why do I want now, for me, because I was the same way with the anxiety. And when I finally quit dumping alcohol on it, the anxiety went away and I got where I didn't need it. But why would I not want to drink when I was having that anxiety? And that made me feel so good. It was almost, I was giving myself reward. It was positive reinforcement, because as crappy and sweaty and shaky and all that I felt when I started with the beer.
Yep.
Well, I just put a check mark in the reasons to drink category. Yep. And now I'm going to try and tell myself, no, drinking's bad. I got all these memories of it being a positive. And that's, maybe I'm just reeling off my personal struggles, but it's, my system was saying, when I'm saying I need to stop drinking, my system is going, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
That's what's keeping us that's what's getting us through the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the back of my mind, I knew I was on a Ferris wheel. And I knew that I was putting myself back in that cycle over and over. The amount of relief that I got from drinking that glass of wine when I was hungover was enough relief for me to recognize, wow, I'm back on the saddle. I'm back on that Ferris wheel. But I knew eventually the ride would end. And I knew eventually I would have to get sober. Even if that meant for a day, right? I knew that there was going to come a time that would end, because, life isn't Las Vegas. You can't just party all day and all night that's not real life. Right. And I knew I was going to have to get off that ride at some point. And I had no idea how. And so I continued to drink like that. And I ruined relationships. I had men that I was dating who, I could always do really well for like a few weeks and, and pull it off like I was an organized, decent human being. And then, somewhere in the 3-week mark, in the relationship I was in, the men would be like, "What the hell? You're a mess." And I would be like, "Oh, that was just that one time." I knew, no, that was reality.
Yeah.
That we call that Tuesday, Mm-hmm. And what I also realized is that when I would go out, I had so many friends and I sort of outsourced my partying to this and that. And I had so much, I was navigating so many different social circles because everyone's biggest, wildest night out was always with me. And that was my Tuesday. And then I'm like, okay. And they were like, "Whoa, can you believe that night?" And I would be like, "No, I've got to go back out. It's Wednesday. I've got another friend who doesn't know anything about last night. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to play let's just have a few glasses of wine." So I was like everyone's biggest night out, right? Yeah. They just didn't know. How long can you live like that? Really? So I remember in pharmaceuticals, my boss pulling me aside after a conference where I couldn't sit still. I had the anxiety. So I moved seats like 6 times during the presentation, and he pulled me aside and he was like, are you on drugs? Like, and in pharma, they didn't have a lot of HR ethics. So you could ask questions like just outright like that. And I was a thoroughbred, man. I never touched any drugs. I was straight alcohol. I was straight wine. That was my only drug of choice. So I was like, oh, how dare you? But really, it was just the alcohol. It was the morning after anxiety where I literally couldn't sit still. Things like that started adding up. People were starting to catch on to me. And then toward my, and as that sort of compiled, I ran out of places and people and things where I could go and pull my crap. And I was kind of, I switched pharmaceutical companies a couple times. It switched, I kind of pulled a few geographics, and I also pulled geographics with men. You're on to me and I'm a heavy drinker and I'm messed up. I'm like, well, see ya. I've got to find a new boyfriend like tomorrow.
Next.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, my running joke at the time was get in line, because it was like, I will replace you so fast. It just, when I think back, there's a quote that I think about, and I can't remember. Maybe it's Anne Lamont or Ann Dusset Johnston. I'll have to think about who said this, but it was basically I was deteriorating faster than I could lower my standards, and it showed in the jobs I was taking, the men I was dating. It was like I just didn't even have any standards anymore. It was just like whatever, anyone that would tolerate me. And so by my late 30s, alcohol really had a hold of me. And I was physically addicted, physiologically addicted, every bit of addicted. And I knew it, and I was scared, and I was depressed. And it was like my little secret inside, like only I knew how bad it was, or at least I thought. And I started, so many bad things. I ended up hospitalized, like in the ER, maybe 3 or 4 times with alcohol poisoning. Some of those times I was pretty pissed off that I woke up, because I thought I was going to find a way to end it all. I thought it's pretty tough to drink yourself to death, right? Because your body shuts down and you can't keep piling the alcohol in. But my mom had to rush me into the emergency room probably 3 or 4 times. I was at my apartment laying by the pool, day drinking, and woke up in a hospital bed. Things like that, where I just lost my ability not only to control it, but to even drink functionally. And I was every time I did it, and every time I made a bigger mistake and a bigger mess and things got worse, I got more depressed, and I got more hopeless. And I wanted to give up, and I wanted to not wake up. I wanted it to be over. You're doing
some of the moderation attempts. I'm going to just do this on the weekends, all that stuff.
I was trying anything I could. I watered it down. I tried to switch to, beer. I only drank wine. I tried exercising. I tried everything, and I wasn't moderating. And then I got so depressed, I just went for it, to the point where I was like, screw it. This is how I'm going to go out. I'm not going to live to see 40, and that's okay.
It's an interesting correlation, because you hear people like with diets. I had a cookie. Well, the day's shot, so I might as well eat the whole bag. And it's for me, if I've got a little over about a year and a half right now, but if I was to drink a beer right now, mentally and physically, the things would happen, but I would say, you know what? I blew it. So what the hell does it matter? I might as well. If I'm going to be starting over tomorrow morning anyways. So if I have one, why not go out and get a case? And that's the self. But that applied not just on a day-to-day basis. That was how I was at life. Like, well, I'm in my 50s. I've blown it.
Yeah.
I missed the boat. I drank past it. What does it matter now? My kids are out of the house, so I'll just ruin my marriage, and I'll end up, doing some menial job. I'll just keep, like you said, I actually had visions of, you know what, if I lose this job, I could do this. And I could, I see a sign at the, I could get by. I could get an apartment and afford that if I take that job or that, I was always almost planning.
Yeah.
On I didn't plan the next step up of where I could go. I was planning the wrong direction because that's where I thought I was headed.
I think that's how powerless I felt. I felt like it had me. It just had me. It had me in its grips, and I felt like I was stuck. And I've told my story in its entirety. And I remember someone commenting, "Gosh, I kept waiting for that to be your bottom, and then you just kept going, right?" And that's I'm
the best. I'm the best.
Do I win? It's all about winning. I want to win.
Yeah.
And so, because it was like I went to the hospital with alcohol poisoning, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times. You know what I mean? Finally, in 2014, I got a DUI. I was speeding. I got pulled over at like 2 a.m. And it was my first DUI. It was, I can't even remember, but it was a high blow DUI because I blew like a 0.2 something. And I remember talking to my family about it, and they were like just appalled because nobody in my family had ever gotten into any kind of trouble. And they really wanted me to quit drinking. And they even kind of staged like a family intervention, which we now know today doesn't really work, but they all sat around and, sat in a room together, and you have a drinking problem, you have a DUI. And I just laughed it off. Like, I was like, screw you guys. So many people have a DUI. It doesn't make you an alcoholic. It's not a big deal. But in my head, I knew I was going down a path I just couldn't. I think there was that voice in my head of planning my alternative lifestyle on Skid Row, right? Because it was like, well, fine, I'll just go live in a trap house somewhere. And
I did. I saw, we like to boat, and I would see boats that are tied up in the river year round. And I thought I could do that.
Yeah.
All I got to worry about is not falling over the side because then I'll, but so be it.
Isn't that sad that it feels so powerless, and it's such a strong hold on you mentally and physically that you daydream about being a hobo so that you can continue, I was like, I'll just be homeless and,
Yeah.
What?
I was anticipating further. I'm writing this down because I just love what you're saying. I'm writing anticipating further failure.
Yeah.
That's what my life was. I was, this is what it is. I'm never going to be that person I dreamt of at one point. So let's prepare for when I lose everything. I want to make sure I should put some spare clothes in the truck right now so that, at least I'll have something to change into. And, that rest stop on I-75 heading up north, they've got some nice, and that truck stop has showers.
Corn dog
there. Yeah,
I love
exactly.
Corn dogs.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, exactly.
See, it's going to be fine. I know. I know. But here's the bottom line. And when I hear us both talking about this, we kind of gave up on we didn't think we had the ability to pull ourselves out, because clearly we wouldn't be fantasizing about a life of experiencing homelessness, being a boat dweller nearing capsize, or,
I'll catch my dinner,
man overboard.
Right.
Yeah. So, fast forward. And so the DUI, I had the year of the interlock in my car. During that time, I of course had to make some conscious efforts to quit because it's, those things are no joke. But what it did was I wasn't able to work in pharmaceutical sales anymore because they lease you a car, and I wasn't a person that you could lease a vehicle.
I'm sorry for laughing, but I just saw you going, what options would you like? Well, let's see, air conditioning, the blower to allow me to start the car, the AM, FM.
Yeah. Yeah. All kinds of, no one was hiring me. And so I moved from back from Portland back to Olympia, where I am now. I have a Washington nursing license, and I started looking for work, but I hadn't done bedside care in a while. So I was kind of really out of my element. And, you know, I've got this ratty old BMW that was falling. It looked glamorous on the outside, but was completely falling apart on the inside. Sound familiar?
Oh, yeah.
With an interlock in it. You know, so I'm blowing and going, looking for jobs. And I tried so freaking hard.
Blowing and going, looking for jobs. But then you just said so many things. I just pictured, yeah, my hair looks nice, but the inside of my car is a complete, everything's falling apart. You know, but I look good. That's the important thing. Wax the car.
Oh, yeah.
Blowing and going, looking for jobs.
As long as I looked good, for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to just get to the end of this because I just, my drunkalogs just make me sweat. Like I'm sitting here sweating just thinking about this. But I finally, this is super embarrassing, but so is the rest of my life, so it's fine. I finally was able to, after losing some jobs that, you know, I couldn't quit drinking. I was calling out sick. I've been an RN for 15, 16 years at this point. I finally was able to stop drinking cold turkey. And one of my nurse friends told me, well, you know what you should do is you should try to smoke pot instead. Like it's legal in Washington. It's really chill. You don't have a hangover. It's not addictive, you know, all the things. So for 6 months, I was able to go cold turkey off of alcohol, but I couldn't sleep and I was still an anxious mess. So I took up pot smoking at the age of like 37, first time use, never tried it. And I was working in home health. By the way, that's the hardest job ever. I lasted 6 months. I don't even know how nurses do that job. And I got in a car accident in the field. I was on my way to see a patient and someone rear-ended me. And my boss was like, okay, no big deal. We just have to do an incident report. So you'll just need to give a UA, a blood or a urine sample for the incident report. And I was like, oh, I'm going to test positive for marijuana. And I was so paranoid because nurses aren't supposed to smoke marijuana. It's not federally legal, for first responders, firefighters, we're not allowed to smoke marijuana. So I had another brilliant idea to get some artificial urine from one of those smoke shops and use that for the drug test instead. Except for when I went to go pour it in the specimen cup, I dropped it. And it rolled out underneath right in front of the person who was collecting the specimen. And she's like, what is this? And I just I broke down bawling. I'm like, it's fake urine. I smoke marijuana. I don't, but I was in the back of my head, I was actually kind of proud of myself that I hadn't drank alcohol in 6 months, right? Because I thought that was the way. I didn't know. So I'm at this home health job. I get fired. They walk me out to the curb, literally walked me to the curb with all my stuff and said, you're done. Get out. Go. They reported me to the nursing commission for tampering with a drug screen, which is a huge, huge offense. And I got put into a program for nurses with substance abuse issues. Nurses who showed up to work intoxicated, or nurses who diverted drugs, or all those things. I got put into a program like that. But I didn't go back to work as a nurse for over a year. I just sat in the shame. And I thought, just like the hobo story, I thought, well,
Were
fine.
you drinking during that hour, that year?
Not really. No, I was trying. I knew it was over. But just like the self-defeating hobo story of I'll go live in a trap house, I was like, fine, I'll never work as a nurse again. I'll just go work at Macy's and make minimum wage and sell jewelry and handbags. Like that was like not fighting for myself that was what all I thought was my option.
Yeah.
And finally I got in front of a really good nurse practitioner who was like, you can do this. You can go in this monitoring program. You can get sober. You can get back to work as a nurse. You can get your life back together. And I went ahead and moved forward and did it. And part of the requirement was that I went to 3 recovery meetings a week. And because, when you are a nurse or a person with a public license and you get in trouble for something like this, it's a really big deal. And the state and the nursing commission want to make sure that you are safe to serve the public. So they have a due diligence to the public to prove that you are competent and safe. So I'm required to go to these recovery meetings. And I'm like, what do I go to? Do I go to AA? I mean, I saw some AA movies in the meetings in the movies where people stood outside of a church and chain smoked, and like, I didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading this book by gosh, what's her name? Anyways, it's called The Recovering. I have it right here. Leslie Jameson. And she talks about going to AA meetings for the first time and telling her story. And she was this Ivy League, very educated woman who was very articulate, a beautiful storyteller. And I remember closing the book saying, you know what? Who am I that thinks I'm too good to go to an AA meeting? And I closed the book and I looked one up and I went straight down to our local Alano club, and it was sweaty and packed and it was full of people, probably like 50 people. And I sat down and I'm like, here I am, sign me up for whatever this is. I'm in. And that was the beginning.
Wow.
But it was a messy road.
Yeah. For anyone that's wondering why I'm laughing through this whole thing, it's only because,
yeah, how rude.
I know. I either cry because you're describing me. You've just changed a few pronouns, but I can either continue to cry about it, or now the fact that I'm at least working on fixing it, I'm seeing hope, and I'm happy for the first time in a long time. So I can laugh at what was, only because, at least for today, it isn't anymore. Yeah. And that's why, so I'm not laughing at the situation. The situations are horrible, but you put a hysterical twist on it. But when you can get past your tears, it is pretty comical, the insanity of what, when I'm not looking at the one ads for pay increases. I was looking at them of where, I could go. And it's so, this is hysterical. The other day I went by, it was some delivery service. I swear to God, I think this was actually yesterday. It was a place that just had vans that did delivery of, it might've been medical supplies. I don't know, but it had help wanted signs out front. And I thought, I could do that if I lose everything, because you can't no one can hire anyone right now. So, as a 57-year-old, I got a clean record. I could do that. And and I'm sure they've got a back room somewhere, it's just, but that's the mental, that's where I've been for so long. So it's like, well, at least I got that in my back pocket. And it's a little bit of a, hey, everything's going to be okay. Cause I could, at least I'll have that. And maybe on the weekends, they'll let me drive that van home, to get back and forth, or, live in it. Who knows?
Down by the river.
Down by the river in a van. But yeah, it's just crazy. But that's I wouldn't be smiling if there wasn't a happy ending, yeah, and a light at the end of the tunnel, and a door out of what I was in. And that's why I'm happy, because I'm thrilled, because I didn't realize that door was there, and I'm finally seeing it. So, yeah. Anyways, so what are you doing today? I know you have, I had seen you on Instagram, and I got a couple links, but I don't know anything. What are you doing these days you got sober? What's keeping you sober today?
Yeah. So, when we were talking about insanity and the places this takes us, I flashed on something I forgot to mention. Right before, I don't know. I think it was right after I got in trouble by the nursing commission. I couldn't cope with all the things, and I ended up spending 10 days involuntarily committed in a psychiatric facility for danger to self, which is, basically I was suicidal. And they tell you in AA meetings that this is where your drinking will take you, right? Jails, institutions, asylums. And I've been to all of them. And so when I got out of those 10 days in the hospital, it was in the back of my mind that I could possibly work in an environment like that. So when I finally got back to work, I got my first nursing job back as a nurse after about a year working as a psych nurse in a inpatient psychiatric recovery center for people in crisis. And I worked my way up into a leadership position, which I'm in now. But granted, I've been sober for 3.5 years, so I've had some time to kind of rebuild my life. But in a way, every bit of my awful story funneled me into the path that I'm in now, because I work in behavioral health, and I hire other nurses, I train other nurses, and I live and breathe that type of work. And I'm really passionate about it because it's a psychiatric facility, but probably 99% of our clients are struggling with substance use disorder of some kind, whether it be drugs, alcohol, whatever. And it wasn't until I got into that type of work that I realized how much my own insomnia and anxiety and my own mental health issues contributed to my drinking. So in a way, my story has come really full circle. And that's why I can laugh and I can be so grateful and I can talk about these things, because I've really had a miraculous shift in the way that things have turned out for me. I wouldn't wish this road on anyone because it was brutal and I didn't think I was going to make it to the other side. But today I work in a leadership position in behavioral health, and I stay super connected to the sober community. I did AA for about 2 years, and I worked the steps. I got a sponsor. I mean, I remember, bless her heart, my sponsor spent so much time with me. She's also a nurse. And we would walk this lake in Olympia, lap after lap after lap, where I was just, lamenting and telling her all of my stories as we're walking. And 2 years of this, and meeting me for coffee, and she would sit with me for hours, and she helped me go through all the steps and helped me make all the amends. And for every story and every shameful thing I did, she had another story, and she met all of it with so much grace. And we found humor, in our stories. And it saved my life. I mean, I don't go to AA as much anymore, but I will absolutely say having the resource to walk into free meetings anywhere at any time absolutely saved my life, because you are instantly surrounded by a community of people who get it, and they will take you as you are. It's very much come as you are. And so I did AA until the pandemic hit and things all went online. And I tried to do some AA meetings on Zoom. But let's face it, I mean, it was a bunch of like 70-year-old white dudes that don't know how to work their computer. So it wasn't a good forum. It was just painful. And AA is very structured, right? I mean, we discussed the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we discussed the step work, and it's very regimented. It's very scripted. It's like going to Catholic mass. When you stand up, you sit down, you read this, peace be with you, and also with you, and you don't deviate from the script. But I do well in a more of a non-denominational church where you can talk about whatever's keeping you in the faith and light of spirit, right? So the pandemic hits, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to die of boredom. Like, I don't have any meetings to go to. And I knew I wasn't going to go back to drinking, but I didn't know how happy I was going to be, and I didn't know if I was going to have any fun ever again. And I started listening to podcasts and listening to audiobooks. and really getting involved in what was available online. And that's how I found some of the online groups that I'm a part of now. And I religiously go to as a way to maintain a sober community.
It's, the AA, because I come from an AA background as well. And to me, AA, for me, it's like a gymnast or a dancer that's expressing and having so much fun. You still, before you do that, you have to do your stretches. You've got to loosen your body up. So those aren't, the fun is the dancing. And I don't know, a lousy analogy, but I'm full of those lousy analogies. But, you still have to, if you want to enjoy the dancing, you've got to do the knee bends. You've got to do the stretches. You've got to do the fundamentals. And that's what AA is for me. Now I explore with other groups involved with TLC, which is the Luckiest Club. I tried to get into Sober Sis, but there was something about that second half of that phrase. They kicked me out. But my point is there's a lot of other things, but I needed that structure. I still have to have, and I do rely on that. And I'm the only program I'll ever recommend for anyone is the program that works for them. And we each have to find that. So, when you're in the psych thing, when dealing with the patients now that are going through this, I was going to ask you what common threads you see with people, and did that help you to figure your own? Did it explain a lot with you of where you came from, with what took you to that spot?
Yeah, it's funny because the way that I see addiction now is so different. And it's, in Laura McCowan's book and in her writing, she talks about, alcohol just happened to be my thing. It's not even that interesting. It's a natural response to human suffering. It's a natural response to self-soothe. So when I come across clients who are experiencing homelessness, they've had a lot of trauma in their life, they've got mental illness going on. So maybe they're hearing voices, or maybe they've got some paranoid delusions, and maybe they didn't have a stable home environment, all these things. And they say to me, well, I used heroin to cope. My response is, well, of course you did. When people say, well, I shot up this or that, or I snorted, or I drank, I'm like, of course you did. It's a natural human response to suffering. So I don't give it the power that I used to. Like, I don't think it's that special. What I do think is it's very normal for people to self-soothe. And unfortunately, some of us just go down a little bit more of a troubled path. But I think that I also have really learned to meet people where they are in the type of work that I do, because my best outcome for someone isn't necessarily going to be what they see their future as. So I have to be able to, meet people where they are in their journey. And if that looks like harm reduction, then that's where I meet them. And even in my personal life, when I help talk with other women, if you cannot stop drinking, but it helps you to smoke a little marijuana, that's harm reduction. That's okay. If you cannot stop using heroin, but you have to drink a glass of wine, I mean, that's a level, for me, I don't have hard guidelines anymore as to what's right and what's wrong, because I realize how different everyone's path is. And I really see a lot of people's internal suffering and big T trauma and little t trauma. And we all just have this natural instinct to self-soothe. People describe using heroin as a warm hug. I'm not a person who struggled with heroin use, so I don't know, but I know what it's like to self-soothe. And so I get it. And so in that sense, I can understand basically anyone, because I know what it's like to hurt and to struggle.
I'm going to click on a couple of, I put some of your links I'm going to run some of these across the bottom of how they can find. I want to hear about your online magazine that you mentioned, the Sober Curator. But I first wanted to ask you how, now that alcohol is out of your life, how do you soothe today? Because the need to cope, the need to soothe doesn't go away. I've taken alcohol out of my life, but the guy's still cutting me off in traffic. I still have a fight with a family member or my wife. I still have tragedy. I still have loss. I still have pain. That doesn't go away.
Yeah.
But I took away the alcohol, and now I'm having to face the same things without the alcohol. So how do you cope and soothe these days without it?
Yeah. So a big thing for me, probably the biggest thing, is community, connecting with other people, talking about it. Humor is absolutely huge for me. Sitting here processing this kind of stuff with you and we're laughing about it, those are coping mechanisms for me. And I stay super, super connected through. I joined Laura McCowan's The Luckiest Club, and through that, I learned about Emily Lynn Paulson, who started the Sober Mom Squad. She also wrote the book Highlight Real Recovery. And I joined the Sober Mom Squad as well as the Luckiest Club. And I started going to those meetings because I'm a stepmom. And then I started offering to volunteer and host those meetings. So now whenever a host can't do it, I sub in. I just did one a couple days ago. I'll jump in, I'll read something, I'll tell a piece of my story, and I'll hold space for other people to share. So that is my service work. And I stay really connected because anything that I'm going through, I know that someone else has also gone through. And I've also learned some little kind of woo-woo techniques, I learned about meditation with Tara Brach and how she uses the rain metaphor to recognize our thoughts, but realize we are not our thoughts, right? It's rain is like recognize, allow, investigate, and non-identification, basically to know that you're having this thought, but it's not, that voice in your head is not an authority over you. And just all these little tips and tricks I've learned throughout my journey. And I've, like I said, humor and connection are big for me. And I recently started as a creative outlet. I joined up with the team that put together the Sober Curator, which is an online lifestyle magazine all about sobriety. So NA beers and art and poetry and pop culture. And I'll be doing a column on fashion called Walk Your Talk.
Do you need any help with that, advice or anything?
I really like your shirt. I think you could pop the collar a little.
You know what? Oh, wait, you talking the button or that?
This is,
this?
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and fashion sense. No, I feel like a goober when I do that. I know I'd rather, I just accept it. I've given up on I look in the low ads, not the high ads for advertisement. I look at what anyways, go on. So
it's staying connected and humor and friendships and all of it, really. I mean, it's just this big combination of things that I keep in my toolbox. And that's a cliche term, but that's kind of how it is.
What is if someone that's watching this and says, which I'm sure there's going to be people that say, wow, I like the smile, I like what I'm hearing, I want to do this. What's your advice to get through that first week, those first few days?
Oh my gosh.
Says, you know what, today's the day, I'm going to do this. How do I not drink tonight or this weekend?
I think for me, at least, the only way I survived was connection, was staying connected, even if it meant going from meeting to meeting to meeting and sleeping a little bit and then going to another meeting, getting on the phone or spending time with a person in recovery and staying. In the beginning, I stayed 100% connected 100% of the time. My sponsor had me do the 90 meetings in 90 days. And there's a reason for that. And that is so that you stay in the game and you stay connected, because we all have that monkey mind, and we all have that squirrel, and we'll want to go back because we've built up a physical addiction to this stuff, and it's part of our lifestyle and our patterns, and it's freaking everywhere. So that staying connected for me was 100% the name of the game.
We went to a football game last weekend, and it was just walking around, all these flashback memories that pop into my head, seeing even people I knew drinking beer.
Yeah.
And that thought does pop in your mind, but I'm getting it's a quick, it goes away a lot quicker, but I'm able to use the tools out of my toolbox. One is being able to truly accept what will happen if I was to drink at that game. And we went, and my mind wants to just give me the happy, joyous thought of, hey, wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be fun? I got to dig a little bit for the negatives, but when and it's like, oh yeah, the drive home, I would be stopping. Oh, I would be, and the DUI that could happen, the panic I'm going to have, all those things. Then when I get home, my wife's going to say, let's go out for so-and-so. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm half in the bag, and I want to drink more by myself, and all the negatives. So the tools are much quicker to come out and utilize. Plus, like you said, the connection. I don't do it as much, but if I was going to go to a game newer in sobriety, I would have called my buddy Kate and said, hey, Kate, I'm going to go to the game. I'm going to call you afterwards just to tell you how it went. And if you don't hear from me, call me. Just creating a reason that maybe it's a fleeting thing, but maybe at that moment when I'm at the game and I'm looking at the beer, I'm going, oh, wait a minute, Kate's going to come over. I told her to come over and check on me afterwards. Damn it. Yeah. Well, maybe that little bit got me through that moment. So I put to work 10 different tools. Maybe I'll only use one or only need one, but I don't know which one I'm going to need. So I'm going to, I want as much insurance as I can. But yeah, the going to meetings, like you said, it was right when I got sober, was right when COVID was really hitting, and I was able, because of me being in sales, we lost the ability to go out and see customers on site. So I was able to go to meetings. Places still allowed in face-to-face at the times. I took advantage of that free time, and I did 90 meetings in 30 days. I bet I was all over, because I knew that when I was in that meeting talking with other people in recovery, I wasn't drinking. Yeah. At least for that hour. Yeah. And hopefully for the hour that I left, I had enough of a boost of inspiration and good drive that got me through. Now I got 2 hours that I didn't drink. Yeah. I'll worry about the third when it gets here.
And I also met some of the most badass, incredible people in recovery that have just been such a blessing in my life. I couldn't imagine, like 10 times the friendships and the bonding and the all of it that I would have made, sitting in a bar and talking about handbags with some random chick over a glass of wine. I mean, the connections I've made through sobriety have been amazing.
Does your husband, if you don't mind me asking, does he drink?
He does, but not a lot. And he certainly doesn't drink in the home. He's kind of, I think because he was in the Army for so long, he'll go out with the boys and have a drink once in a while, but he doesn't bring it home. It's not part of his, it's just not part of his lifestyle to have any alcohol in the house. He's not a person that'll have a beer with dinner. It's just never been. And so I got fortunate in that sense, because I don't have to deal with it in our home.
Are you able to go out for dinner with friends or whoever if they are drinking?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been out partying. I've been out. But I have a little bit of time under my belt too. But yeah, absolutely. Whatever it is, I'm in. This summer I went to a huge raging party with a, frozen daiquiri machine and kegs, and I have no interest. It just
that's the magic. That's
no interest.
That's the miracle that I never thought could happen.
Yeah.
I'm the same way, and I've now entered into the. It started off. I'm not able to drink when I go to those things, and now I don't have to drink when I go to those things. I look at it as a positive, especially when you see people that are drinking, and I almost now see pain in a lot of people, and I almost feel sorry for them. I used to feel jealous, and now it's the opposite.
No, I recently went to Vegas, and I thought this is going to be a little tricky, sober in Vegas. But I looked around and I was like, oh God, I'm so glad I'm sober. I felt bad for people. I felt sorry for people. That's what I felt. And one of my favorite quotes, and again, I can't remember the author because I'm really bad about this, but was an older writer. She had said, alcohol doesn't produce anything that lasts. It's just wind. And that that stayed with me. And when I think about it now, I think it's just wind. That's all it is. And, go back to recenter, be here in the moment. My life is infinitely better since I've gotten sober.
Well, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and have a great day. I don't know, is your husband, is this a quiet time for him on a day like this?
Yeah, really, these types of days are quiet. Reach out to some buddies. Try not to watch the news too much.
I think it's the phrase with 9/11, never forget.
Yeah.
And that keeps me with my sobriety. I hate to remember it. My sobriety, or my alcohol abuse, sucked. My drinking days sucked. But as much as I want to forget those things, it's important that I don't. Because if I forget it, I'll probably repeat it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Double-edged sword. So, all right, Kate, I got some of your links below. Unbelievable. Thank you so much for being here. And we will see you again Tuesday night, everyone. Enjoy the weekend. Take care. We'll see you.
Thanks.
And stick around. I've got some lovely parting gifts for you after the show's over.